Either you may have to pad it with zeros or spaces or convert in some way, right? Otherwise, there will be a problem. Or another simple example, in India, you use DDMMYY as the format for date. Whenever I am printing an invoice or a bill, in my India database, it will be in one format. If the same company has another office in US, if they have a different database there, that storage will be different. But finally, if I bring everything to headquarters, I need to convert them into a single format. That is what is called transformation. In very simple terms, let me do one thing. I am going to draw a simple diagram. Again, as I said, typically when you go through the fundamental way of drawing, it's easy for people to understand, right? Now, I go to this basic flowchart, right? You have source. This is I can have multiple source databases, okay? 1, 2, 3 different databases. And I can have another file as an input data. So this is from supplier 1, this is from supplier 2. So you can have multiple data coming from each other, right? Supplier 1, let me reduce it to say 75%. And you have got supplier 2, supplier 3, supplier 4. But the thing is, how do I get all these things? So what they do is, this is source. From this place, you will have an intermediate area. There will be some processes. Those are all called transformation processes. They are all nothing but programs, right? This is called transform. Basically reformat. A transform is nothing but a reformatting of that. So what happens is, you take multiple data, right? You have this data, connect it with him. You have another data, connect it with him, right? So the transformation process takes multiple sources, right? Then finally, ultimately there should be a target database. This is the final database. From here, there will be a single transformation, okay? So this is an arc, so I'm just doing it. This is the target. So if you look at it in a simpler way, right? You have a source, multiple sources, a single transformation that's happening, target database. It's a very simple ETL layout. But the issue is, this is for one system. Part number, serial number alone may have this flow. Now what about the HR data for the company? What about the CRM data for the company? What about the financial data for the company? If you are a listed company in the stock market, what about who is tracking your stock information, right? For each of the data entities, for each systems, you may be ending up with multiple extract, transform, and load. This is exactly the problem in data warehouse. If you see, once you extract all the data and format it, it needs to be loaded. Ultimately, it has to go to a database. That should be always, most of the times, this will be a relational database management system, RDBMS, because reporting will be easy. But the problem is, loading sequence is very important. You extract from multiple places, but if you don't load them in the right way, then your data will go haywire. Why? There are time zones. When you have got multiple offices all over the world, you extract with different time zones, with different formats, put them in together. Suppose you have to store Japan data first, then Hong Kong data next, then India data next. if I do it in the wrong way, my timestamp will be different from that of the other guy. It will start showing issues. So the loading sequence is very, very important. Now, just a quick thing for people who joined a little bit late. We are Softsmith Infotech sponsoring this webinar. If any of you are attending from the Europe place geography, we have a partner, Glides. You can visit www.glides.com. So we are the partners. Open Mentor is sponsored by Softsmith. This webinar is sponsored by Softsmith. Soon we'll be sponsoring webinars from Glides from Ireland too. So if you have anything in terms of information that you want to collect, you can visit these sites. Okay. Coming to this one, challenges, right? Before that, there's a question. Since I have mentioned loading sequence, can you explain? Okay. Let me tell you a simple example. Let us take e-commerce itself. That is very e-com is very easy to understand also. Now, assume price list is updated every 3 hours, okay, by vendors. I have an e-commerce site. Every 3 hours they send the latest price of their product, because within the day, especially commodities, right, they change the price every 3 hours or 4 hours. Within a day they may have 3 or 4 hours of 4 changes. And 1 p.m. they sent file 1. Then 4 p.m. they sent file 2. Then at 7 p.m. they sent say file 3. So what is the sequence in which I need to put them into the target database? File 1, file 2 and file 3. Imagine for some reason I load file 1 after file 2, and the price details in file 1 may be higher than file 2, but obviously that was not what the vendor wanted, right? They wanted to have some discounts made within that 3 hours. So if you wrongly load them, as and when it happens, we need to load them. Or in the same sequence they have been extracted, you maybe have to load them in the same sequence. If you don't do that, your price information may be lagging behind 3 hours, which may not be wanted by the vendors. So you need to be very, very careful when they are loading the information, right? Now, obviously there is no need for actually going through some of the tools, but there is always a question from audience: what are the tools that you can look at ETL space? Informatica, Ab Initio, then again Cognos also provide ETL features. So you can look at these tools. Again, these tools are not free, they are all commercial, so you may have to buy licenses from these tools. But if you have a clear idea on getting the data and their format, using the tool is only a facility. If you do not understand the data format, the extraction sequence and loading sequence, no tool can help you, because tool is only helping people to do the activities quicker. So you may have to have a very clear understanding of extraction transformation, right? Now, the challenges you may face while doing this data warehousing and ETL is source file will have errors. You are supposed to get price details, right? You are supposed to get in dollar. If they send it in pounds, you will have issues, right? Source file errors in terms of wrong formats, bad values, right? It may have issues. Then sometimes people change the formats dynamically without telling the e-commerce platform. If they change, if they add additional one field, suddenly the extraction algorithm may fail. So if they dynamically change the values, it may fail. But the problem is, one extraction fails, it may be having a cascading errors with others. So extraction fails, then because of the transformation fails, because of the loading fails. So one vehicle which crashed in the middle of the road may bring the entire traffic to a halt. Same way, one error by one wrong extraction program may cause cascading errors. Of course, the wrong loading sequence, right? If you load the files in the right order, you get the right values. If you do not, then we have a problem. Let us take another example from banks. The closing balance of every day, yesterday's closing balance and today's closing balance, they have to happen in that sequence only. By some mistake, if I load yesterday's closing balance first and today's closing balance first and yesterday's closing balance next, obviously you are off by one day. That is not the right data. Another important thing is concurrent ETL issues. I showed you this diagram, right? This is a simple diagram, and this is for just one application. If I have 10 applications in my system as part of my company, if you take somebody is asking what kind of systems you can have, production planning, CRM, HR, accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, right? Everything is a separate system. If they are all interconnected by bridges or interfaces, each one will have a separate ETL for them. And now the problem is, end of the day, for all the systems, I want to transfer the data to the headquarters through multiple ETL processes. That is where this concurrent ETL issues, multiple extractions, multiple transformations happening, it will make the systems slow. And another thing is slow queries. When you are actually extracting from relational database management systems, if you write the queries in the wrong way, they can cause a lot of performance issues on your systems, because the reason is ETL will happen in real time in live databases. So when one process is slowing down, you are slowing down the live database. That will cause a lot of panic across the user community. So in that case, we may have to necessarily optimize all those queries, right? So again, these are one of the top 5 or 6 challenges I have written. But there are other challenges, right? You need to have admin privileges. Suddenly the privileges are not there. Security issues in terms of sending the files, security issues in terms of loading, disk space is not available. There are too many challenges available, but these are all the typical top 5 or 6 challenges that you may feel. Making sense so far? How do you feel? Are you feeling comfortable so far? Can you please raise the hands if so? Cool. That's good. Now, I'm having a set of questions before I move to the next, what is needed for the testers to get into the ETL space, right? I'm taking some of the questions from the audience. Can we connect 2 ETLs together? Yes, you can have multiple ETLs going, ETL sessions, I would say. Extract is a separate process, transform is a separate process, load is a separate process. So you can have multiple extract, transform, load going in parallel. Absolutely no issue. Can a developer become an ETL tester? Ideally, whether you are a developer or a tester, when you are entering into the ETL field, you should be good at database processing. You need to know how to extract data through select queries, format of data, because in databases you have got varchars, varchar2, datetime stamps, right? There are different field data types are available. So you need to be very good. You need not know C# programming or anything else, but you should be very, very good in database. SQL to Oracle to DB2, can we have central bridges? Yes, that is what this ETL is doing. In fact, that is one of the reasons. One system, HR system may use MySQL, accounting system may use Oracle. In those cases, you may have to bridge 2 different database types itself. So you may have to necessarily have bridge between multiple database types, right? There's a question already. What are the responsibility for ETL tester? I'll take these questions and then come to that next. Now, how do we determine the archival process? Is it time-based or is it transaction? It's a very good question. Sometimes people say, especially in reservation kind of a scenario, day before yesterday's tickets cannot be cancelled today. It's almost like done. So you go based on the timestamp. In some places, they will archive based on even 1 year or 2 years. So most of the time it is time-based or a duration-based. But in specific cases, they will say every million record, archive, put it in a database. So because they don't want the main database beyond certain record counts, right? So, and again, how many years the history should be saved, it depends upon the compliance in the country. You are bound by the contract with your end customer. Some customers may ask even 2 years, some customers may ask 7 years, some customer may even ask you 99 years. We don't know, right? So it is bound by your contract with your end customers. What is the relationship between ETL and business intelligence? Yes, business intelligence is nothing but pulling the data and then getting a report. But from where you will get the report? You need the data. But if data is scattered, how will you get the report? That is what is ETL. You take distributed data or scattered data from multiple sources, reformat them, put it in one single place, get a report. That is what is called business intelligence. And a few questions like, what are the technologies used? As I said, when it comes to the ETL space, it is purely database. You have to be either good in Oracle or MySQL or MS SQL Server. If you take any of the databases, the select, insert, update, delete, all these queries are pretty standard, almost like 95% standard. And the data types are almost compatible. So you need to be very good in databases, not necessarily in programming language like C# and Java when you have to enter into the ETL space. That's an interesting question, sir. By any chance, are you Nagarajan from Sarsmith? Yes, this is Nagarajan. Okay. Now, how do we take dynamic data? When you say dynamic data, again, I treat them as real-time data. As and when we talk, reservations are happening. As and when we talk, stock exchange details are happening. So any live data, these are all dynamic data. They are all bound to change. The stock price is bound to change. But what happens is you don't update the same record. If you go to the stock market screen, at 11 o'clock, what was the stock price? At 11:02, what was the stock price? At 11:03, what is the stock price? So they keep new records as part of history. So data is there. Whether you overwrite or keep it as history, it's up to the application. Now, what are the basic requirements that we should expect from development team on ETL? Very simple. ETL also will go through SDLC. It will have its own requirements. It will have design process. But the design will always say what is the format of the data, source data format, target data format, and what is the extraction algorithm. So they will do that. So it will also go through requirements and design. So based on that, we need to write test cases. But the development team needs to follow those design documents. To my knowledge, there are not much of open source tools on the ETL space, but what we suggest is you can always write SQL queries and cron jobs in Unix towards ETL. But usage of tools like Informatica or Ab Initio, they will help you to make it faster. Otherwise, then it will become, you have to write everything on your own. Can source database be an RDBMS? Yes, source can be anything. Source can be CSV, a flat file, a structured file, or an XML file, anything. But usually the target is RDBMS. 99% of the times it's RDBMS or a big data kind of stuff, because reporting will be easier in RDBMS. In what ways we determine whether we should go for coding or tools? As I said, tools help you to make things faster. You can still code what the tool does, but it's your choice, the company's choice, whether you have the timeline. And tools also come with price. You have to pay the price also. So that is also that. Now, let me take